And gentlemen, I'll call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. So just so everybody knows, like, be on your best behavior. No making comments at other people's comments. So let's move to approval of the minutes. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
Okay.
from September 14th.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Mike and a second from John. We'll start with John.
Oh, yes.
Andra?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Adrian?
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Thank you. Brenda?
Abstain, I was not here.
Levi?
Yes.
And Rich?
Yes.
Thank you. The chair also votes yes. That passes unanimously with 2 abstentions. The chair has no report. Does the vice chair have anything to report? And the director?
Yes, we have some updates for you on some long-standing ordinance amendments. There are 3 that are making their way to the council, hopefully this next month. First is the shared housing ordinance. The second is the off-street parking ordinance, and then the RMF 30 zoning district amendments. And they're planned to be discussed by the council on October 18th. So with some decisions shortly after that, hopefully. So just wanted to keep you updated on those. Those have been slowly moving their way through the process, and we're excited for some potential changes there.
Do you know when the public hearing for those are?
I believe October 18th is the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Nope, okay. This is the 10 minutes where the Planning Commission can bring up any item of concern they want to discuss. Anybody have anything there? Oh boy, we're going to be really...
I have one.
Okay.
Sorry, I was finishing eating. A while back, we talked about bringing someone in to talk to us about city code violations or
Well, the enforcement
enforcement.
stuff.
Thank you. And I think we were going to talk about RV parking on public roads, and we're going to have someone come and speak to us about that, but that hasn't happened yet. Am I right, Amy? We still need
Well,
to schedule.
it happened, but the discussion got diverted to ADUs. So I had invited them back, but that date hasn't been set.
Okay.
So we'll mention that to staff and see if we can get somebody scheduled for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay, well, we'll jump right into the public hearing portion of the meeting. The first item up is case number PLN PCM 2021-01142, ADU at 1726 East Hollywood Avenue. Welcome, Katie. Katie Lynn, right?
Nice, nailed it. Gonna hear a lot of me today. While this is loading, this is an accessory dwelling unit proposal for a conditional use at 1726 East Hollywood. It is in an R17,000 zone. The proposal is to convert an existing attic space of an accessory building, and staff is recommending approval. This is a site plan. As you can see, the existing building is 1 foot from the west property line and 51 feet from the rear property line. And Currently, the main floor is a garage, and it will remain a garage once the conversion is completed. And then the existing upper floor is just a storage space at the moment. And the plan is to convert it into a one-bedroom ADU. In my staff report, I went into kind of the unique case behind this building. Because it is a non-complying building, but it's legal, they are allowed under the code to convert it to an ADU, and therefore the only size requirement that they're required to comply with is the gross square footage, which the code states the ADU cannot exceed 650 gross square feet. And in the zoning code, gross square feet is defined in an attic space as anywhere with 7 foot ceiling heights or more. And so this drawing here from the applicant shows the hash marked areas are the areas that meet that 7 foot ceiling height. And the floor area for that is 376 gross square feet, which does comply with the 650 of the code. These are the elevations. This is all existing. They're not proposing any new windows or doors. The elevation that is of most concern is this one, which is the west elevation. That's the one that has the 1 foot setback. It currently doesn't have any windows or doors and will remain that way. It's also been there for 20 years, so it's not really a new problem for the neighbors. As I said, staff is recommending approval with no conditions. We did do the regular noticing for this, and we didn't receive any comments for or against it. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Is the applicant here?
She is elderly and was unable to attend tonight.
Okay. I guess we'll move right to the public hearing portion. Is there anyone in the audience from the community council? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Going once, twice? Okay, I will close the public hearing on this item and bring it back. Oh, any emails? Thank you. No emails. So I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission. Any questions for Katie Lynn or a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Andrew.
Based on the analysis and findings in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve PLN PCM 2021-01142 Hollywood Avenue ADU conditional use request.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Andra and a second by Mike. We'll take a vote. Let's start with Rick.
Yes.
Levi.
Yes.
Brenda.
Yes.
Adrian. Yes. Mike.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Andra.
Yes.
And John.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. So the ADU is approved. Oh, and you have the next one too.
I have the next
right?
one.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing for PLN PCM 2022-00-493, a conditional use for an ADU at 535 East Division Lane. Yeah.
All right, we have another one. This is a ADU, one of those prefabricated ones by Modal. It is 567 square feet, going to be in the rear yard, and staff is recommending approval. Here's the site plan. The proposed ADU complies with the 4 foot step backs for single-story accessory dwelling unit buildings. It is also just under the 50% square footage of the principal structure. I think the exact percentage is like 49.7, so essentially 50. It is a 2-bedroom unit. The only side that has windows or doors is the south elevation, which faces the back of the principal structure. And of note, the AC unit that is attached to the exterior is on the interior portion as well as it's not next to a property line at all. Staff is recommending approval of this conditional use. I was able to attend a Sugar House Community Council meeting. They just had some questions about the parking that I was able to clarify. And then I have received no other comments from the public on this item.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? Is your applicant here?
Yes. But
Do they have anything they would like to say? So speak directly into the microphone and state your name for the record, and then you can tell us what you want to tell us.
Chris Drent, Modal Living, 132 South State Street in Salt Lake City. No, I think staff's done a fantastic job presenting. If you guys have any questions for me, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, we've seen some of these before. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, is there a driveway associated with this property?
So there's a driveway on the site plan that is to the east side of the property
Yeah.
that will provide access and parking for the ADU. They've got quite a big area gravelled.
So this piece of property is a little strange. The owners technically own two parcels. The one parcel to the east isn't shown here. That is the one that has the driveway and parking. It's because it didn't really have any bearing on this application. We didn't consider that parcel at all in evaluating the conditional use. We didn't include it in the presentation.
But it does provide
Access.
Yeah.
And the existing garage is accessed from that
Yes.
property, from that side yard as well.
Mhm.
So what happens when that side yard is no longer a side yard, or is it too small to be a?
It's honestly, we're not really sure about the history of that parcel. We looked back at some old records back in like the 50s, and it's been there for a long time as access. It looked like it used to be a road that accessed a farm before
how big is
I-80.
it? How wide is it?
I honestly am not sure.
It's pretty good size. I believe, if I remember correctly, sorry, I've got a bunch of these going on, that there's an easement through there to the park or the land, I believe, owned by the church that's to the north of the backyard of this. And so, yeah, it's not going anywhere.
Okay, it is 44.5 feet.
That's a big,
Wide.
that's a big easement.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that's not the easement, that's the side, the width of the lot.
Oh, okay, okay. Anything else? Okay, seeing no more questions from the commission, let's move to the public hearing. Is there anyone from the Sugar House Community Council here who would like to speak? Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this item? Are there any emails? Nope. Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Do we need any discussion, or will someone make a motion?
You're not. Do you think that we need to tie those two parcels together if we're using, why don't we need parking for this? Because there's on-street parking?
Yeah, that's where you can see it down at the bottom on the south side of the property. They're using the on-street parking as to satisfy the parking for this parcel, even though it's highly likely that in actuality they're going to use the parking on the other parcel. We just can't consider that parking because it's off-site parking for the proposal.
And you're not worried about tying these two together?
No.
Okay.
Not for this application anyway.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Based on the analysis and findings in the staff report, the information presented, I move that the Planning Commission approve PLN PCM 2022-00493 Division Lane ADU conditional use request.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Amy and a second by Brenda. Start with John.
Yes.
Andra.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Amy too.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Adrian.
I apologize. I have to recuse myself due to a conflict of interest. This applicant is a client of my law firm. I should have done it in the beginning, but I forgot, so my apologies. So,
Okay, thank you. Brenda.
Yes.
Levi.
Yes.
And Rick.
Yes.
That almost passes unanimously except for Adrian, so they can move forward with that.
Thank
you. Okay, now we'll move on to item number 4, the Rocky Mountain Power North Temple Headquarters zoning map amendment at approximately 1223 West North Temple Street. Case number PLN PCM 2022-00450. Welcome, David.
Hello, give me 1 second to get this queued up. All right, there we go. As you noted, this is item number PLN PCM 2022-00450. It's a rezone request for the Rocky Mountain Power North Temple headquarters. It's the rezoning of multiple property parcels, the entire property at 1223 West North Temple, as well as portions of 1219, 1275, and 1407 West North Temple. It's outlined on the map there, but I'll have a little bigger version of that in another slide or so. Again, their stated purpose is to develop a new headquarters building for Rocky Mountain Power. The current headquarters is located adjacent to the street on North Temple. Staff is recommending the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to City Council. Site context, here's a kind of a zoning map shot with a few other items added to it. We have the Utah State Fair Park to the east, and right across from that is the Fair Park Track Station. The Jordan River corridor runs through kind of the east side of the site, the larger parcel that's being rezoned. And then to the west, you have the Cornell Track Station. Again, this view is intended to show kind of the proximity of transit and location of the property and where the subject properties are in location to that. So the parcel that's being rezoned would abut the Jordan River corridor. Aerial view showing current uses of the property, largely been used over the years for Rocky Mountain Power storage and operations, industrial land, M1 zone, some TSA along North Temple, largely underutilized. So this is why Rocky Mountain is looking to move forward to rezone this for a new headquarters and then eventually rezoning a lot more property they own there for a overall bigger campus development on approximately 100 acres of property. At this point in time, we're just looking at the 5-acre piece for the headquarters building as kind of their inaugural rezoning, and that'll set the stage for some of their other redevelopment and rezoning down the road. Quick pictures of the property. Top left picture shows you where the Jordan River corridor kind of comes through the east side of the property. So key considerations on this, we looked at compliance with city goals, policies, and plans, that neighborhood compatibility and anticipated impacts, the riparian corridor being present. We always look at alternate zoning districts, what could work in lieu of what's being requested. The request is from that combination of M1 and TSA SPC, which is the special purpose corridor zoning, to TSA UCC, which is urban center core zoning, and then public input and concerns. Looking at the master plans and city goals and policies, the The request is supported by Plan Salt Lake principles and initiatives as outlined in the staff report. The area is discussed in the North Temple Boulevard plan. It was kind of located south and halfway in between the Fair Park Station area section of that plan and the Cornell Station area plan. The plan didn't anticipate changes on the Rocky Mountain Power side. I don't think that was on anybody's radar as far as a property owner with this large of a parcel wanting to do something else than had been traditionally done on that property. So it's not in conflict with the plan, but these changes weren't identified in the plan. The plan does recognize that there will be overall change in the area, and staff has been working with Give Development and Rocky Mountain Power that at some point as they move forward with the larger campus development, we're looking into how to structure some kind of master development agreement or plan amendment that will be adopted for their larger campus development. We look at compatibility. It's not going to be incompatible with neighboring properties. The area is generally industrial, so there won't be negative impacts on the neighboring properties. At the same time, there's a lot of potential positive changes through better activation of the Jordan River corridor, more eyes on the trail in an area that's largely been industrial, that's going to or is expected to transition away in the future from those industrial uses, and facilitating additional employment and other development near mass transit. The riparian corridor is present, so there will be additional restrictions that apply to development along that corridor and floodplain permits and other things like that when there is an actual development proposal. We looked at, in terms of alternate zoning districts, they had requested TSA UCC, which is the urban core zoning, and that would allow up to 90 feet in height on the property. Under that zoning, the TSA SPC that exists closer to North Temple or along the frontage of North Temple allows 75 feet in the core area. The applicant, in their narrative included in the staff report, stated they want a smaller building footprint to better have activation of the site, and TSA UCC is not necessarily what they would be looking for on the rest of the larger site, but that'll be evaluated on a case-by-case basis as this comes forward for the rest of the property or different sections thereof. So staff is not recommending an alternate zoning district. The properties are located in Poplar Grove, but within 600 feet of also Jordan Meadows and the Fair Park CC areas. We did send notice to all 3 community council chairs and did hold an online open house. We only got a comment from the chair of the Fair Park Community Council saying they support the rezone, but they have concerns about the parking for future development, and again, but we're not at that stage yet. No public or neighbor comments were received. Oh, okay. We look at the standards of review for general amendments, that's 21A 50.050, including the purpose statement, and found that it does further the purposes of the zoning ordinance. It will not negatively impact neighboring properties and bring actual positive benefits to the area. It is consistent with the zoning overlays, the airport overlay zone and the riparian corridor, and infrastructure can be provided to the property. A lot of that will depend, of course, on the actual development plan that would be under consideration. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to City Council for the zoning map amendment.
Questions for David?
I have some questions, David. So how old is the plan that didn't really consider this?
2010-ish, 2010.
Okay. And I'm just wondering on the timing, because normally when we do get a rezone, it also is accompanied by a master plan amendment or a future land use zoning map amendment. And why is the timing on this one excluding that step?
It's not required to have a master plan amendment, and we were looking at it in terms of that we're going to be working with the applicant to develop some kind of master development agreement for the larger site. So that would come when a larger portion of the property is under consideration, but at this point in time, the 5 acres is kind of a very small portion of that.
So this is my first time, I think, hearing of working in the future on a master plan type thing. What is the process for that with the developer?
We are admittedly figuring it out. It's not something we've done before, and the planning director and myself and some others have discussed that, but looking at something like Daybreak might have done on their development, where we come up with sort of a generalized vision for the area, but it is somewhat new to us.
Well, that makes me happy that I didn't miss something in the past 4 years, but will you be looking at the larger, all of the surrounding M1 zones, or just this core of what they own?
Probably just the core of what they own, the 100 acres, but I'm sure we will look at it in context of, the other surrounding M1, because I think one thing to note, sorry, backing up quickly to one thing I forgot to point out, I believe it would be, okay, on this slide, and again, you're looking
north, right?
North to south, where you get across the tracks, and the Jordan River stamp is on there, is the Mark Steele site on 200 South, and that was rezoned a number of years ago as well, from M1 to TSA, and it's currently, there's a proposal to do housing on there. So that process has already started to kind of generally rezone the area.
I think it might be worthwhile to extend the parameters of what you look at.
Pardon?
I think it might be worthwhile to extend the parameters of what you look at, because just because it's M1 now and it's owned by, Joe Smith, doesn't mean you can't express a vision for the future, and instead of doing this piecemeal.
No, you're right, and that probably would be wise when we look at this in more depth, because, again, I think this whole area of M1, nobody really contemplated that there would come a time where this is changing, but obviously the 100-acre Rocky Mountain Power site would be a big impetus for the rest of the area to change.
I think that's always a shortcoming of our master plans, is we don't really look to the future of a lot of the whole area. Anyway, so one of my other concerns and my question to you is, you had mentioned that there would be additional restrictions for the floodplain requirements and for the Jordan River, because I'm not familiar with any, is there any provisions in the UCC code or zone that kind of deals with this, or are we only going to be relying on what we have on the books for floodplains?
There is a section of our zoning ordinance that deals with the riparian corridor overlay, and they would be, as part of a development plan, working with public utilities on what those requirements are with floodplain elevation or other things with the development of that, but I can't speak comprehensively to exactly what public utilities would require. It's part of the zoning ordinance, but it's administered by Public Utilities Department.
Okay, because as I think about evaluating this UCC zone to its adjacency to the Jordan River, I want to make sure that it's a proper zone that won't allow it to have certain infringements upon the Jordan River.
Yeah, the riparian corridor has a setback of like 100 feet or something.
Right, and that
So
riparian corridor overlay applies whether the property is zoned M1 or TSA. It's irregardless of the, or regardless of the underlying zoning.
My last question, and then I'll be quiet, is you had mentioned that what is allowed in the TSA UCC zone is somewhat, I guess, overkill of what they've indicated they intend to do. And so I guess what is the benefit then of a UCC zone if they don't want to go up to 90 feet or whatnot? What are the reasons why you think this is a zone that's proper for this area, given their expressed intent does not seem to even build up to that?
I think the applicant can probably answer that a little bit better on why they
Okay.
would want the UCC zoning. From our perspective, it was just to allow the additional height.
I've got a couple questions. One is just pointing out that in the North Temple Corridor plan, the Cornell Station was at that point called the Cornell Station. It quickly changed to Power Station and is now Power Station today. So I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any confusion there. But I definitely echo Amy's concerns, and I wish that this request was part of a larger master plan, and wish that I had more of an idea of what Rocky Mountain Power intended to do with the entire site. But living in the neighborhood, I have huge concerns that Rocky Mountain Power as the developer, and also we as the city, may miss out on an opportunity to get the walkability correct in this development. And if we don't get that correct, then we could potentially squander the investment of having 2 track stations next to this development.
Anything else? Is your applicant here?
The applicants are here.
Is that Melissa Jensen?
Yep.
And company? Come up, sit at the table here,
I'll move back. Just
state
getting
your
their
name for the record, whoever is there with you, and then you'll have 10 minutes.
All right, that works.
And you'll have to get up really close to the microphones to make them work, okay?
Hi, thank you. Melissa Jensen here. I'll quickly introduce the team. We have our architects, FFKR, with us, and as they join in the presentation, they'll do proper introductions as well. And then Mario Costanzo from Rocky Mountain Power as well. Give Communities is acting as the developer consultant for this process and owner's representative. And so I will kick us off. I don't think we'll take 10 minutes, but would love to entertain any questions that you might have. I think one of the things that we want to iterate as we kind of demonstrate the feel is that we want to provide you a sense of what could be on the long term. So Rocky Mountain Power has been in this area for a very long time, and they're truly committed to being future stewards of this area in a way that makes sense for the community. In this first step, we have focused on the regulatory and utility needs of the company, which includes their headquarters area, the essential operations, which of course, if there's another earthquake or other items, we want to be stable. And then of course, parking to accommodate their facility. The height is in fact an issue for the headquarters in particular. So our goal was to create a more activated and dynamic ground space through going higher, which is accommodated by the request of the UCC. So we do intend to use that height parameter. I think in David's staff report, what we had talked about is it's not necessarily indicative of the plan for the whole site. And so we did want to take one piece in the constraints of the site. In one of the slides that he showed, it was very clear that we have the river, railroads, which cannot be moved, and some other parameters that also sort of surround where the HQ might be. And so the intent was to move them towards the back in order to activate some of the frontage in a way that could make sense for the North Temple development. So I think if we want to go to the next slide, I'll just take you through one other little thing. And again, these slides are illustrative. Susie and Brandon will really kind of take you through some of the components that we do think will resonate as we go towards the master plan, and I'll let them talk about that. I just want to point out a few items here, and it's that Rocky Mountain Power is really trying to re-envision themselves as a catalytic player in both the commercial, retail, and pedestrian space, and to create an area that is pedestrian-focused and honors sort of the Jordan River and the North Temple work that has been done in terms of transit. They're looking to build a high-performance building and ensuring that as other development happens on the site, they will do that. The intent is not to sell the land long-term. There may be portions that will be sold, but ultimately you have a steward here that is going to be working for a very long time. And I think our intent with the city is to continue to work collaboratively with the Planning Commission and the planners and the City Council about the full site master plan. I think important to note is that Rocky Mountain Power is also faced with some time restrictions related to the development of their new headquarters, which has brought this forward perhaps earlier than maybe would have been anticipated, just to provide some color to that. Is there anything you want to add before, Mario, before? Okay.
No.
So I'll let Susie and Brandon kind of talk you through some of the beautiful pictures. And of course, it may not look exactly like this. I always like to say that caveat. As you know, these are renderings, but I think it kind of speaks to the spirit.
Great. Just introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. I'm Susie Petheram with FFKR, Senior Associate and Senior Planner, and I've been heading up the planning effort for this Phase 1, and will also be heading up the full site master plan. Some of the points that we just wanted to dive into are the reason for going higher. We are looking at a 6-story office building. A typical office floor to ceiling is 15 feet, and so that got us to the 90 feet, and the urban center seemed the best fit. The goal of not only this site, but the whole site is to be a premier transit-oriented development for Salt Lake City, the North Temple Boulevard as a gateway entrance into downtown. And so using the TSA for this area seemed to make the most sense for what we were trying to accomplish. The goal is to be as efficient and effective as possible in the placement of the RMP headquarters campus. We have the main headquarters building, a separate essential services building, and then the parking structure. By including the parking structure in the rezone request, allows us to be more compact with that structure, go a little bit taller, and also include a potential residential wrap product on both ends, so that it's not just a standalone parking structure, but also includes housing that will share that parking and create a central shared parking resource, not only for RMP, but for the surrounding neighborhood as it evolves. One of the benefits of going a little bit taller with this building and the specific placement is that the area along the Jordan River is now opened up. It's integrated into the development. It's fronting on the access road that we're planning along the east side of the property, so that existing trailhead now becomes much more of a community park. It expands down to just the north end of where we envision the headquarters building to be located. The parking will be replaced 1-for-1. And then with the development that's going to happen across the road and adjacent, there will be amenities for those trail users. In addition to that park space along the Jordan River, we're also envisioning a community plaza or open space adjacent to the parking structure on the west side of the street. So you see that in some of these images. Brandon and his team have done a great job of just trying to communicate the vision of where we're taking this project. And we're still in those early phases, but the direction of the project and the rezone request seem to be hand in hand, and we feel it's the right choice of zoning for this property.
Hi, I'm Brandon with FFKR Architects.
Get a little closer to the mic.
I'm an associate architect with FFKR. I've been working with Susan and Give Group on the master plan. I want to address a question that was asked about the riparian corridor in the TSA zone. There's a requirement in the TSA UCC zone that requires a 50-foot buffer from the river up to 100 feet. But if you go above certain, I think 75 feet, then you have to take it 1 foot back further than that. So we've placed the building 75 feet from the top of bank of the river, which allows, the whole master plan idea was that the Greenway along the Jordan River continues past the headquarters building and further into the site, which we have envisioned to have a lot more green open space in the center of the site, of the full 100 acres.
And I think I would just add in terms of the approach that we took with the rezone was that we actually anticipate from now until City Council, as we hone in the legal descriptions of the actual, that it's going to shrink about a half acre. So it's going to be just under 5 acres. So just to give you a sense, this is what we had submitted, but you can see in some of the massing that it's actually right in the middle of our essential operations building, which actually is better suited for an M1 zone to accommodate the utility. So there, again, this is a unique circumstance where you have a utility that is acting in a catalytic mindset to create development. And so we're kind of maneuvering that. And here is what we sort of propose for the end. So it doesn't grow any, it just sort of shrinks a bit. And even though the central operations will remain in an M1 zone, the intent is that it still has components that reflect the sort of environment of activity while respecting the needs of an essential operations utility. Anything you want to add to that, Susie?
Yeah, one
or
thing
Brandon?
that has been a key component in this master plan is connecting open space to the Jordan River. And I don't know if you can see, and can you flip to the other renderings?
Madam Chair, I can't really hear him.
What's
You
that?
need- You need to get in there closer to the mic.
Okay, I may be
Yeah,
right.
there you go.
Close. That's
That's the
too
way.
loud. One of the key components we wanted to consider in this master plan was a connection to the Jordan River Greenway. And so what we're trying to show, if you can go to the aerial view, I think that's probably the best one. The aerial. There we go. As you can see in the building with the orange and the white on top, that's the parking garage building. That's covering it's the residential, covering up the parking garage, but you can see this greenway that's going west, and that's been one of the major parties of this master plan is to make sure that it's not just jam-packed with residential development, or office, that there is a connection of green spaces and pedestrian spaces, and by going denser with the TSA-UC, allows us to do that.
Any more questions for the applicant? Andra?
Yeah, Melissa, you mentioned that there was some time pressing, that we couldn't sort of, it sounded like you were trying to address why we couldn't wait for a master plan for the whole 100 acres. Can you just speak to exactly what those time constraints are on the headquarters building?
I think that, and Mario, please jump in here. Sort of, I think with the constraints to optimize operations is a priority of Rocky Mountain Power. And so they want to get the new headquarters built and also to bring in some of their auxiliary operations to one site and one headquarters. And there's some regulatory deadlines in terms of when the new building needs to be built.
Yeah, this is Mario Costanzo with Rocky Mountain Power, project manager. Yeah, Melissa's right. The essential services building really is the driver of that timing for grid resilience and operability of the system as a whole. That building needs to come in. That's kind of the item that is sort of speeding it up as compared to maybe a longer master plan or something.
So would you build that building, would you start building that building ahead of a master plan agreement with the city?
We are looking to build the building within the requirements of the TSA Urban Center core regulations.
So you're going to build the building based on this zoning change that we're making today. So we won't see this again before you build this building.
Most likely not. I imagine that you will continue to get updates as the process moves. So we're not slowing down the process. So we'll continue to, if I understand your question correctly, We will continue to move forward on the full master plan with FFKR, which will include public outreach and amendment and working with David Gellner and the team related to process and a development agreement. But specific to these buildings, we will look to build under the UCC zone.
With the exception of the Essential Services Building, which is the smaller building, and those 3 buildings you see. It's in the M1 zone. That is not in consideration for the TSA rezone.
Right, so my impression from the discussion that has been from David's presentation and from yours so far is that this is the first step in a master plan, not the first step in actually building a building. So it's a little bit disconcerting for us to say, okay, here we are sort of approving a building footprint and location, not approving it, but not having any kind of input on that particular decision. Especially since I'm not sure why you've dragged this building back from the street, 500 feet.
So
when that is one of the things which we're trying to do, and none of your renderings show us North Temple. I mean, it's as if you're like in the middle of the desert somewhere, and you're going to put some green stuff down.
To a couple renderings.
We have been master planning not only the surrounding context of this area, the first 10 to 12 acres that surround where Rocky Mountain Power decided to locate the headquarters. So we've been looking at about a 10 to 12 acre section from 1300 West and just west of 13th West over to the river and then down to the railroad tracks. As part of that master planning process with Rocky Mountain Power, they identified the quadrant and location where they felt the best fit was for their headquarters and the Essential Services Building. The goal of that is to have the parcels that front on North Temple remain available for other mixed-use development opportunities. And that is something that is being pursued. There's opportunities right now, within the TSA zone of what could happen on North Temple. And the goal is that this headquarters building will be a catalyst to show this area is transforming. We're looking to create an urban, dense, pedestrian-friendly, transit-oriented neighborhood. The headquarters building, instead of trying to take, that primary opportunity up on North Temple, locating it to the back, which suits their purposes a little bit more effectively, and leaves that North Temple corridor for other development that we think will happen fairly quickly after the headquarters building is initiated.
Just out of curiosity, what will happen to the existing headquarters building?
The existing headquarters, I know they've done some feasibility studies on whether or not there's an effective reuse for that building. But the next step from here is to look back at that full 100 acres. And just because we aren't showing any master plan here doesn't mean that we have not been thinking about this project in the context of the full 100 acres. We've been looking at it for probably 18, 20 months now in concert with RMP and GIVE. And so because we're dialing in on this specific area, it might seem like it's out of context, but we've been thinking about how this can fit into that bigger master plan. As we go into that full 100-acre master plan, that's when we'll start coming out to the community. We'll keep the community councils informed. We'll probably do some design charrettes with some key stakeholders. That will be a little bit more of a public process. This process was specifically with the objective of finding the right location for RMP and to get that headquarters and Essential Services building underway so that they can meet their regulatory timeline.
For a bit of context, this rendering here is almost pulled back to North Temple. And then if you could, Mario, if you could.
Something there that you're going to build there.
What's that?
I mean, go on to the next rendering too. I mean,
There's something that's missing in these renderings that are clipped. But there, you can see on the right-hand side, there's the beginning of the start of what would be a mixed-use residential building on the corner. I don't know if you can see this here.
And I think
That
if you
image
go
is-
to the site plan view, Mario, we can
It's
just
clipped a little.
show the relationship of what the northern boundary, where you see that TSA, SP blue boundary, that's where that other building that you're seeing in the corner of the rendering is. And so we anticipate a building right there. Right now, the state and the DABS building is located just to the west of that parcel. Right now, we're not looking at redeveloping that parcel, but have been in discussions about how that might be integrated into a future mixed-use development. And then on the other side of 13th West, which is the only full access intersection into this section of the property, there will be another parcel for an additional building on the west side of 13th West, which we envision coming down into the property to provide access for Rocky Mountain Power, as well as the residential wrap on the parking structure.
So I have a question about what happens, sorry, Aldra, just one more, and then what happens to the transmission lines that are running through the property right now?
Those are being relocated south of our generation facility, Gatsby, which is south of this area shown here.
Okay.
Yeah, south of where the stacks are and the Gatsby plant.
South of the, south of the railroad?
Yes.
South of the railroad, yeah.
Thank you.
I guess I'm a little behind the ball here. Can you outline the full 100 acres and situate, I assume it's in the staff report, but I couldn't find it in the staff report, the full 100 acres and where the 5.5 acres sits in relation to that? And all the 100 acres is currently owned by Rocky Mountain Power, that is correct? Do we have a map of the full 100 acres?
I'm sure that David can pull one up because he's very good on the spot. And I will just say where it's situated is you are at the eastern part of the 100 acres. So what you are seeing is the very edge of theirs, and then the master planning process will move west. And the Ramada kind of end banks the Rocky Mountain Power site along North Temple, if you're familiar with that property. And I think that I will just say too that the renderings are illustrative, right? The building is not complete yet. We are still working. We're happy to continue to provide updates. The rezone is what we feel will accommodate the height needed in order to have a smaller headquarter footprint in order to meet sort of what they need for their programming needs as a headquarters. So theoretically, you could build wider in M1 today. It just probably wouldn't be as aesthetically pleasing.
And it would allow additional development to go around the RMP. So if RMP took up, more space in this phase one, then there wouldn't be the space for that adjacent development to occur and really kickstart the mixed-use transformation of this neighborhood. The master plan for the whole 100 acres is also contingent on the phasing and the decommissioning of that Gatsby plant. So that is not slated to occur until 2036. So it's a phased master plan, and the north half above where South Temple goes into Rocky Mountain Power, which is part of their site, that South Temple corridor, is privately owned but continues the alignment of South Temple. That essentially denotes like south of there is intended to be post decommissioning of the Gatsby plant, but north of there we're looking at additional phases of development to occur, and that's what the master plan will start looking at how that can happen between now and 2036.
So what we pulled up here to give you a sense, what we're talking about today whoops.
Wish we had a laser pointer.
Part of that property goes clear to Redwood Road, doesn't it?
It does.
It does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a lot of lay down yard service. I mean, there's a lot of constraints currently that are being worked through. Even along that North Temple, currently there's a city easement along North Temple. And so working with the city to make sure we can maintain river access, et cetera, is part of the process.
Oh, go ahead.
To describe where we're at with the phase 1 zone, if you see that you have the 4 screens and see that central dividing line, take that as a dividing line for phase 1 and then go east and so the South Temple where the railroad tracks is the southern border and the North Temple is the northern border and the river is the eastern border. That's phase 1 of the master plan. We had gone through a competition process to get into
Close
Oh,
this.
to the mic. There you go.
Sorry, we went through a competition process over a year and a half ago to get into this game right now. And what we had envisioned is along that stretch of North Temple, the South Temple is a very more dense mixed-use neighborhood with green space connecting all these different neighborhoods and then connecting it to the river. And then further into the site, a larger green space that could connect all of them.
Did that answer your question, Andra? So basically the Jordan River to Redwood Road.
You may reiterate that again, where it's at?
And then down to the railroad tracks, the curved railroad
down-
tracks, and then
yeah, south of the
Interstate
rail
80.
tracks. Yeah.
There's a couple parcels, that are owned by the trucking company, the Ramada, and then the state DABS store. But minus those, that essentially the river to Redwood.
It's a
and
big
then-
chunk.
It's a big chunk.
Yeah, I guess I'm just sort of like mulling over the idea of a utility owning 100 acres and sort of how much is the plan to use for Rocky Mountain Power operations and how much is, I don't know, I'm just having a hard time thinking about that ownership structure and sort of what the implications are.
Well, and that's what this rezone is part of what Rocky Mountain Power is trying to streamline their presence on the site into this one section of the phase 1. So the headquarters, the essential services, and then the parking structure for their employees. And including that essential services building has 24-hour round-the-clock operations and presence. And so trying to create a neighborhood around that headquarters. And then as the Gadsby is decommissioned and some of those laydown yards are repurposed to other property outside of this location, then we can start to utilize that full 100 acres in a more effective way for creating that transit-oriented neighborhood that really activates those 2 stations. So it's unique that we have not just one transit station, but 2 that are within a walking and biking distance of most of this site. And so we would say that right now the North Temple Boulevard plan and the existing zoning was not anticipating what Rocky Mountain Power has envisioned for the site. And so rather than saying this is in any way going to squander any opportunity, it's going to maximize and exceed the opportunities that right now are envisioned in the North Temple plan and the current zoning.
What's the other transit station besides Power Station?
The
What's
Fair
other one?
Park Station, just on the east side of the river. So the phase 1 area and their headquarters is about equidistance walking for getting to either of those stations. The power station in the future, we envision that to probably be the heart of this 100 acres with the access and the full intersection movement at the 1460 West. But for now, 13th West is the full access intersection, and then we've got access to both of those stations from this location.
Okay, anyone else?
How many square feet is the initial office building and the services center is really a data center, is that correct?
There is a
Yeah,
data center component to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about 200,000 square feet for the office.
300,000?
200,000.
100,000, thank you. Sorry.
And then for the central services building,
I think we're right around 50,000 square feet, but they require a 20-foot floor to ceiling because of the operational nature.
yeah.
So it's about a 50-foot building, but it's really just two
It's
stories.
2 stories, but it's got two different operations. It's got the data center and then essentials, the electric grid's operations on top of that. We're trying to address that in a very urban manner too, but technically that will be in the M1 zone.
Anything else? Mike?
I just have a difficult time really understanding the overall context without seeing the whole master plan. And one of my big concerns, and it was something that was definitely brought up as the North Temple master plan was being written, was that as you go west along North Temple and you reach 10th West, you lose the street grid and you just have mega blocks without any and it basically just kills walkability in the neighborhood. So I really wish that there was some type of plan that showed how that would be restored to this area. And I see a huge opportunity to be able to return South Temple as a street. Unfortunately, your site plan for this actually has the back of the building fronting on where South Temple would be. So that really makes me question whether you understand that opportunity.
So the
believe
rail
me.
company currently owns that corridor.
We have
and
definitely
so-
struggled.
Yeah.
And
Back and forth with that.
there's a plan in motion to relocate that rail yard, so that's not going to be there forever.
Right, and that is something that we've thought about in the context of the larger master plan. That area is right where the Gatsby plant is located, so that would be post 2036. But we are looking at how, when Gatsby is decommissioned, how that area can be repurposed, and then looking to integrate that street network on the south side of the building. So it looks like the back of the building now. It's not intended to be in the future, but we're working within the context and the property ownership situation that we have at this point in time, and trying to, as we said before, just being as effective and efficient with the use of space. So there is that constraint of trying to work with that rail corridor and a different property owner and the south border of the state's DABS parcel, and trying to get the headquarters, the essential services, and a functional parking structure with residential wrap in that space, and introducing a street network that goes between those buildings, but then looks to provide a greenway on the north side. So it's becoming very fine-grained. That was intentional. Instead of trying to create, just 3 buildings all in a row that could have taken up that full 660-acre block between North Temple and South Temple, we're looking to divide that into 3 different sections to really create that fine-grained network.
I think in terms of process, how we've split it up is we want to be transparent about our intentions for the site, but also clear that this request is really related to an adjacent use to a TSA zone already in order to accommodate the needs of the regulatory entity. And so I think that there's lots of continued room for discussion on the master plan, and we don't want to squander that. I think we wanted to show renderings to kind of demonstrate the direction, but in principle, we are asking for the zone change related to that to complement the TSA zone that's on North Temple that can already invite development as we move forward, and add to that within the barriers. And so I think I get the struggle of the full plan versus what we're doing today, and certainly empathize with that and want to make sure that we can provide additional information if necessary, but also we're not in a position to extend the timeline if that makes sense. I'm trying to be sensitive to the issues.
Anyone else? Hang tight. We'll go to the public hearing, and if there's more questions that come back, we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone from a community council that's here for this item? Okay, seeing none, I have a card from Cindy Cromer. Okay, Soren, go ahead. You'll have 2 minutes.
Up to
You can have the 5. Okay.
So I'm here, my name is Soren Simons, and I'm here representing the Jordan River Commission. I am here in my official capacity. I should note that both Rocky Mountain Power and Salt Lake City are partners of our organization with representatives from the mayor's office, Rocky Mountain Power, that serve on our governing board. I wanted to just provide a little bit of context about work that we're doing. Over the last 2 years, we have been updating a document called the Blueprint Jordan River, which is a region-wide community vision for the Jordan River that encompasses this site with a lot of specific input that we've received from about 8,000 residents across the Wasatch Front, including many from the neighborhoods around this area. I also want to give the context that for thousands of years of human history, the Jordan River was the center of life. It was where indigenous communities came to fish and hunt, to receive water, life-supporting systems and services from the river itself. And we have been working to try and bring some of that indigenous knowledge back to this particular stretch of the Jordan River, which has been really impacted by a lot of negative urban impacts over the last. And this really is a focus on recentering the community around the river. This is an idea, a concept that's been embraced in a lot of community conversations with the local neighborhood councils. I wanted to just note that in the staff report, there's not any reference to the Jordan River Commission's 3 officially adopted documents, the Blueprint Jordan River, the Best Practice Guide for River-Oriented Development, and the Jordan River Management Plan. Although the city hasn't formally adopted these documents, they are a signatory to the interlocal agreement, which was approved by all of the organizations that participated in the Jordan River Commission. And if it's helpful to staff, we would love to help support the review of those documents and how they provide additional context. It is interesting that the city doesn't have a master plan for much of this particular corridor between North Temple and I-80. I think that's reflected in the staff report. The West Salt Lake Master Plan, northern boundary is I-80. The Rose Park Master Plan, southern boundary is North Temple. And while there was some work that was done as part of the redevelopment agency's efforts to improve North Temple, including the transit corridor, that didn't contemplate what is being suggested here. So what I would like to offer is an opportunity for the Jordan River Commission to help support this initiative to develop around the Jordan River and be a stakeholder in those development efforts. We're not speaking in favor or opposed to the specific zoning recommendations. I see myself, my first time viewing the renderings and other development, there's a lot of really positive things that are being recommended here. There may also be some nuance to it that we would love an opportunity to help support through our technical advisory committee and our development review team to help support the city's efforts and master planning by very capable professionals and Rocky Mountain Power's development consultants to help make this even better. There is a lot of development activity anticipated in this area. The Fair Park has just recently completed their own master plan. The master planning that will be ongoing for this property. What we've seen already happening with the redevelopment activity around the Mark Steele property, which is south of the railroad lines on the west side of the Jordan River, has us a little bit nervous that we're not really thinking about how the river as a community building connective thread is really being contemplated beyond the boundaries of each property owner, which includes the city, which owns the Fisher Mansion. We are currently in the process of applying for a grant through the Design Assistance Team program of the American Institute of Architects to help provide some visioning that is currently, we think, inadequate with the current zoning and master plans that are available by the city to help kind of jumpstart how we think that is centered around the Jordan River and brings new life, new vitality to an area that's been really negatively impacted through a lot of industrial development. So we're here to
You have like 30 seconds.
okay, we're here to offer our support, both to Rocky Mountain Power and to the design and planning team and to the city. We'd love to be a resource and to help identify how this development can really be a way of bringing the community together and meet their objectives as well. Thank you so much for your
Thank you, Soren. A resource for you. So staff has asked to pause this meeting for just a few moments while she takes care of a technical issue.
Can I ask a question while we're waiting?
Sure.
So we, okay. I just want to verify that the actual request here is different from what we got in our staff report. Is that correct? Anybody know? Answer to that? Dave? The boundary?
No, we've got to wait till she
Okay.
gets the recording going again. Sorry.
We're still in the public hearing too, so that's, it's like,
Are you having trouble? We are recording. Okay. And we lost a commissioner for a moment. She'll be back. Huh? You still have a quorum? Okay. Okay, David, go.
Okay, you were speaking to the boundary changing. The exhibit that's up is what was included in your staff report, approximately the 5.5 acres. And this is the applicant's presentation. It has been slightly scaled back to remove where that operations building would be. So it's more around 4.8 acres now.
Okay, wait. So the public hearing is still open. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Cindy, step right up. Get closer. Is it turned on? More technical errors, I guess. Shall we just bring her up to one of these other microphones? Is it on now? Step right up here to this.
My name is still Cindy Cromer, and can you hear me now? Yes, this is better.
Yeah.
So for those of you wrestling with the concept of what 100 acres look like, it's approximately the size of Brigham Young's farm, now known as Liberty Park. It's big. I have two reasons for speaking tonight, in addition to being generally supportive of the request. One is that the zone will not require housing. It is on the transit corridor. Like the blank check FBU in 2 zone, housing is not required. The involvement of the GIVE group reassures me enough that I am not going to have a full-blown tantrum about the fact that housing is not required tonight. You have the authority to initiate a petition to require housing in these zones which allow just about anything but do not require housing. We have a crisis. I would consider it reasonable to use emergency powers to change requirements in zones to require housing where it is appropriate. This proposal is an example of how housing could be increased without destroying existing housing and the character of our diverse neighborhoods. Other opportunities include nonconforming properties which are abundant in the Bryant and Central City neighborhoods, 1- and 2-story office buildings in the East Downtown and Central City, vacuous surface parking lots which are everywhere in this city. You could also initiate a petition to provide incentives for redeveloping these types of properties where no one anticipated housing being appropriate, unless you were in the business of housing as I am. And in 2014, when the station area plan was written and didn't contemplate housing here, I was no longer advertising my vacancies. So I don't see it as reasonable that housing was left out of consideration at this site. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this topic? Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring this back to the commission. Now, Brenda, you can ask all the questions you want.
Thank you so much. So I have a question, actually, I have a comment actually on Cindy's comment, which is the TSA SPC also does not require housing. Is that correct? Anybody?
David?
David?
The
you help us?
TSA, as far as I know,
That's
doesn't
correct.
require housing.
That is correct, right? So we have this entire brown area that we're looking at in our, I'm looking at the staff report with the current zoning, and we're going to add to it some more that doesn't require housing. So a huge station area opportunities that we're sort of foregoing. So I think it is worth looking into in terms of a master plan or revisiting a master plan for this area, that there be some notion of housing on those, because even if you do a 100-acre plan as it is right now, there's virtually, even if we change the zoning here, there's nothing that will require you to do housing. I mean, I know that we are looking at good people here, good intentioned people here, but there's a real need, if we're going to have 100 acres worth of development, to see if that can't be accommodated.
Can I answer to that?
It depends.
Up to you.
Be succinct.
Okay. The intent definitely is to provide a lot of housing. And going forward with the first few parcels, it is intended to be very prescriptive about that. Give Group is in control of that. We are helping them develop this as a design, but as you can see in these renderings we provided, that housing is definitely a priority. It's supposed to be a very active, pedestrian-friendly neighborhood with a lot of housing, some mix of office and other uses that are beneficial to the public.
Okay, we hope to see that in your plan in the long run. Anybody else have any discussion?
Well, I have a question for David. So in relationship to the interim agreement with the city being on the Jordan River Commission, what's the policy of your office in reviewing those type of plans that aren't like officially adopted by the city council, but are expressing a city's view?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that. I don't know if Casey has another opinion on that, maybe.
Could you say the question again?
Maybe. Okay, so what is your approach when you have a plan such as that was brought up by the Jordan River Commission, that they have an interim adopted policy where the city is on their governing board and participated in its adoption, that it's not reviewed in relationship to projects that then abut, say, this Jordan River? So you review plans that the city council has adopted, but what is your approach then when you have these alternate types of plans that have been adopted where the city has been an integral part and it does represent kind of a city agreed focus?
So one of those plans, I mean, despite the fact that we support it, if it's not adopted as a city general plan through the processes and policies outlined in Utah Code for a land use plan, then it doesn't have an impact per se on our zoning efforts. If that's, I think that's...
Does it have an impact on staff's review efforts?
I couldn't answer that for staff, but I don't know that as a policy it could.
If I can just speak to something, I realize this is getting a little bit ahead, but since we will not likely speak with you before we see any plans, the biggest barrier to activation on the Jordan River Trail in Salt Lake for me is the lack of restrooms and trash bins. This is a consistent problem, and if you could provide some access to the public to use a restroom, I don't know why other cities that I run along in the Jordan River Trail, Murray, South Jordan, all these cities provide somehow restrooms and trash bins, and I don't know why Salt Lake doesn't. Anyway, I really, it's not just a small thing. It really is a major barrier to activation, and so I think if you could keep that in mind, that the public needs access to restrooms if you want them to be able to play along the Jordan River Trail.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I just have a question about the timeline. Is there going to be some expectation of when we might see the master plan with this project? Has that timeline changed?
I would say two things. One, I would defer to city staff to talk about exactly when is appropriate in terms of process for the Planning Commission. From our perspective, we have been working diligently for a while to think about the site holistically in terms of housing and mixed use, and are committed to that long term. And we plan to have a draft to share with stakeholders like the Jordan River Commission and other folks to gather input in that public process come Q1 of next year.
Also, Melissa has been involved in several meetings with Nick Norris and other people in the city, and sharing the master plan with them.
So it may be a while.
I would just add, if you're contemplating a development agreement to cover some or all of the 100 acres, that's the hook to get housing as a requirement in the development outside of whatever's in the zoning code currently. So city folks can keep that in mind going forward. I'm willing to make a motion.
Good.
I was going to mention that a number of these issues that are being brought up in the discussion remain whether the current zoning stands or if the new zoning is adopted. It's not necessarily with the change in zoning, these aren't going to be resolved necessarily. So the coordination with the Jordan River Commission, that would happen regardless or not happen regardless. And if if they wanted to propose something that was compliant with the zoning, they could just go ahead and apply for a building permit and do that. So I just want to kind of keep the focus on the zoning change and what can actually be dealt with tonight.
I just wanted to say that while I'm still disappointed that there's not a master plan yet, I definitely see the urgency for this, and I'm also happy to see that to see a design team that I know will do good work, and I also feel like this is an opportunity for the city to look at maybe some more master planning in this area. I also would welcome back Rocky Mountain Power to do a work session, because I would love to give to more feedback in a more relaxed setting. And if no one else has any comments, I'll let Adrian make the motion.
Go ahead.
Okay. Based on the findings and analysis in the staff report, testimony, and the discussion at the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the proposed zoning map amendment file PLN PCM 2022-00450 for the properties located at 1219, 1223, 1275, and 1407 West North Temple Street, respectively. Proposed zone change from the M1 light manufacturing and TSA SPC transit station area special purpose area core districts to TSA UCC transit station area urban center core zoning district, PL public land zoning district. Is that supposed to be in there?
Probably a
No,
typo
strike
in
that last piece. End with urban center core zoning district, period.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Adrian and a second by Mike. Start with John.
Yes.
Andra?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Other Amy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
And Rick?
Yes.
Thank you, and the chair votes yes. It's a unanimous decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our last item of the evening, a zoning map and master plan amendment for the Riverside Cottages at approximately 552 North, 1500 West. And this is case numbers PLN PCM 2022-00674, PLN PCM 2021-01075, and case number PLN PCM 2021-01203. Aaron.
Hello. I'll just wait for everything to load up and get on the screen. Okay, let's see if I can remember what I had. So this request it appears complicated because there's a lot of applications and there's a lot of moving parts, but I hope as we go through here, I can get you to grasp it real easy, and we can be able to help you get the information you need. So this is a request from Bert Holland, who's here today, to rezone some properties in the northwest neighborhood. It's near Bachman Elementary School. It's really in two parts. The first part, we'll get to a map, which is easier to really understand. The north part of these properties, they would like to rezone from the existing R1 7000 district to the SR3 district. And with that, the applicant has submitted a master plan amendment in an effort to comply with the first standard of the zoning map amendment. While it's not required, it's generally recommended by staff. And then the south half, which is the front 110 feet of the properties facing 500 North, would like to rezone from R1 7000 to R1 5000. So with all that, here's a map of what's going on. The area with the blue is what the applicant would like to rezone to SR3, and that includes the master plan amendment. And the area in green is the rezone to R1 5000. And this specific property has been before the Planning Commission before. It's been a long time. Some history with this project. It was a single lot, and it was denial was recommended because of that single lot. The applicant has come back with multiple properties to kind of in hopes of complying with the standards and to avoid the spot zoning definition that's in the code. And staff is recommending approval for this request. So here's some of the properties. These are the houses facing 500 North. It's just moving to the east. So this is 1522, 1516. I've already forgotten the addresses, and the White House, and then the other White House. Here's the home that's facing, this is 522 North, 1500 West. The property in the rear, that was part of that original application. So a big question with these rezones is what is exactly going to change with this? So specifically, smaller lots would be permitted with this rezone. There are more housing types, specifically single-family attached, a limited amount of townhomes. They're limited to 6 units on a single building, and that they have to be on individual lots. This would not be like an apartment building. Multifamily is not permitted in this district. And then 2-family buildings and duplexes. And then the setbacks, there are slightly smaller rear yard and side yard setbacks, but in the R1-5 and R1-7, the side yard, the smaller of the 2 side yard setbacks is comparable to the side yard setback permitted in the SR3 that would be on both sides. So in the R1-5, there's the 4 and the 10. And in the SR3, there's 4 and 4 on either side of a property. A big issue that staff found looking through this master plan review is that there are multiple master plans with competing objectives. Specifically, the Northwest Community Master Plan, at that time, it was adopted in 1980 and updated in 1992, and they really pushed to limit dense development in single-family neighborhoods. More recent citywide plans, specifically Plan Salt Lake and especially Growing SLC, the housing plan, they really push for that medium density infill that pushes for home ownership. And the SR3 district is that effective compromise. The purpose of the district is for compatible infill in single-family neighborhoods. That was its intent when it was developed and adopted by the City Council. So staff feels that the SR3 is really an effective compromise to push for these things that are needed in the city, like Cindy talked about, for additional housing, but while maintaining the character in the neighborhood. So just some larger scale, take a step back in the neighborhood. You can see that generally the neighborhood is single-family detached, but specifically where these properties are, the lots are pretty deep and pretty large. There are already some dense infill. There's some duplexes on 1500 West that are comparable in scale, as well as this planned development on 500 North. So staff recommends approval of this proposal because it meets the zoning and map amendment standards. Not really standards for the master plan amendment standards, but it's compatible with those master plans with that change. And it fulfills the goals, like I said, of those master plans. And we have received, as far as community response, there was one family that reached out and on the phone and expressed concern over this, but I have not heard back from them since I sent out the early engagement earlier this year. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, questions for Erin?
I just have one question, Erin. So in your
Yes.
staff report, you had mentioned one of the concerns being overflow parking on 1500 West, because those duplexes seem to use that as off-street.
Yeah.
What are the parking requirements in an SR3?
So the R17 is 2 per unit,
Yeah.
and the SR3 is 1 per unit. The response from transportation said, 1500 West can handle that additional traffic that would come through there, but we can't really know for sure without a traffic study. And that's
How
not-
did transportation evaluate it if we don't have an actual plan?
Well, there's not actual plan, but just based on the possible density that could be placed on those in this area.
So, but they evaluate it as traffic, not necessarily
Parking.
Parking.
No. Yeah. And yeah, I did note that it is at the elementary school, and anyone who's been outside an elementary school between 2 and 4 knows.
I generally avoid that.
Yeah.
I think anybody in their right mind would. So then do you feel like then the concern you expressed in the staff report has been satisfactorily met?
I don't think that it can be met, or like it can't really be addressed in this step of the process because of the nature of the property. There's only that one little entrance, 1500 West. A planned development is going to be required. Also, because of the housing loss mitigation process, they can submit a development application, which is probably what's going to happen before City Council. Bert can speak more to the timing on that, but before City Council adopts reviews the application. So that planned development, they will need to provide some sort of commentary and plan on what their approach to the parking issues might be at that point, at the development point, where you would review that again.
Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. What other zoning was considered for this, or was there?
Staff doesn't really recommend, or I don't recommend zoning to the applicants. This is just what they requested, and I take that request and move forward with what they had proposed. And the SR3 is what was proposed before, and it fits the proposal that they want to do on this property.
Okay.
Anything else? And your applicant is here.
Yes, Bert Holland is representing the applicant.
Introduce yourself, and you have 10 minutes if you want to take them.
Thank you. My name is Bert Holland, and I am the applicant for the zoning change for Riverside Cottages. The whole reason we're doing this, we're trying to provide additional single-family detached housing in downtown Salt Lake. That's kind of like one of the things we think is very important to do also for families. I would like to thank the Planning Commission for taking the time to review our application, and thank the city planner, Aaron Barlow, for the hard work of putting the staff report together. I'd also like to thank the members of the public and the neighbors who would like to weigh in on our zoning application, because it takes a village and we all benefit when everyone's voice is heard. The staff report represents a thorough and fair evaluation of our application, and we support it. I would just like to mention a few items. As Aaron already mentioned, we have the intention of filing a planned development application for this project, but we have not yet finished it. This is because a neighboring adjacent landowner has requested to participate in the Riverside development. It would be in this exact same area, it would just be a slightly larger area, so that we will need to adapt the planning accordingly. Regarding the housing mitigation plan, we submitted a housing mitigation plan whereby existing housing will be replaced with new housing because the planned development application is not ready yet. We will soon submit a zone change for the adjacent parcel, but due to scheduling, we might submit it as a separate phase for zoning and planned development purposes. Here is an illustration of our preliminary site plan, if Aaron can find this. There it is. It consists only of single-family detached homes. Although the ordinance allows attached homes, we do not intend to offer any attached homes, only single families. This, we feel, will be ideal for families, especially considering that the Bachman Elementary School is right next door. As you can see, most of the homes face a common space with connected walkways, a community garden, and other features to strengthen the sense of community and neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration and time. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Now you can ask your question. Brenda? Other zoning considered? Do you want to ask the applicant if he considered other zoning? Oh, no. Okay.
I'm trying to rotate it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the top is east, not north. Sorry about that.
Anyone else have questions for the applicant? Anyone?
You're planning just to demolish, remove one house, right, of the existing?
Yeah, we're renovating most of the other homes, but we're not changing the size, the size of the dwellings or the number of families they're going to have in them. And we are destroying one home. Basically, now it's correctly oriented to the right towards the north.
Yeah.
There's one home in the middle of those 3 lots there. There's one home on a rather large lot.
And
And that
that-
will be replaced with 3 homes.
And that's currently accessed by 1500 West?
That's 15, yeah, from the north, yeah.
Is it occupied?
Yes, it is. There's been a lot of concerns about that because we've got temporary facilities serving that home, and the city, which department was it?
Civil enforcement.
Civil enforcement has said, well, you've got temporary structures in temporary water supply, and you really ought to do a permanent water supply. And we say, well, we're trying to replace those homes as soon as possible. We just don't want to leave them empty.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, if not, I will open the public hearing. I have a card here that came with a letter. I will read this letter, and attached to it are a page and a quarter of signatures and names. This will also be scanned and put into the public record. So, dear council, I, the undersigned, express my strong opposition to PLN PCM 2022-00674, PLN PCM 2021-01075, and PLN PCM 2021-01203. The proposed rezoning at 552 North and all portions 110 feet away from 500 north of 1500, 1516, 1520, and 1522. While the local community may be unable to prevent development, that in itself will be detrimental to the area. Nearly all residents in the neighborhoods surrounding the Riverside cottages are completely opposed to the addition of multifamily housing that will cause traffic and safety problems, create even more problems with schools that are already over capacity, and potentially lower the property values of the existing community. Traffic and safety of pedestrians are major areas of concern. 500 North between 1200 West and Redwood is one of the most narrow streets in the area, measuring only 36 feet. Vehicles are routinely parked on both sides of the street during this into essentially a one-way street. Speeding abounds and has resulted in property damage and the death of a child and several pets. A zoning change as drastic as this proposal will only increase on-street parking and will result in more of the aforementioned problems. Schools in the area are already reported at overcapacity, and the council should not approve multifamily dwellings that creates or exacerbates a situation that will cause school concurrency to fail for this proposal and/or other approved plans. Since the initial rezone was proposed in 2012, PLN PCM 2012-00697, actual plans have been submitted only once, and they were rejected by the Planning Commission. The current developer is pushing for a rezone without providing details of the planned development. This leaves the neighbors vulnerable and held hostage to a developer who can change the details at their leisure. Without these details, a fully informed judgment cannot be made. An additional development to the west of this location was constructed several years ago without a zoning change and is thriving. I urge you to disapprove the proposed rezoning, and from recent meetings and discussions with my neighbors, I know my opinions are shared by many who have not managed to attend meetings or write letters and emails. Thank you for your continued service and support of our communities. Best regards. This was submitted by Tyler Peck. And like I say, all of these names will be added to the public record. Is there anyone in the audience who is not part of this letter that would like to speak? You can go to the podium and you have 2 minutes. And be sure to state your name for the record. I can ask later. Is there anyone else? Okay, I will close the public hearing on this item and we'll bring it back to the commission. Is there an issue of water rights? I'll ask the applicant.
The Public Utilities has not indicated any issues with availability of water in those, basically in those streets.
Yeah, and water rights are a whole different animal. Not really
impediment.
part of our purview here.
I'm not aware of any impediment. It doesn't mean there isn't one, but I'm not aware of any.
You're not aware of any? Okay. Any other questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
I would just like to comment first, if you don't mind. I think that the SR3 zone is historically has been used for the inside of very large blocks where the lots like these are extremely deep, and this is something as a pattern that actually is quite common and historic in Salt Lake City, and you see it pretty much all over the central part of Salt Lake. And you'll notice these smaller areas right off of the main block all the time. I think the reason that traffic and parking didn't have any concern is that streets like this have a lot of excess capacity, that you could build 5 times this and not have much traffic here. So we are, I think single-family housing is an essential for us to build. I am sympathetic to people who are dealing with change, but this particular zone is appropriate for a single-family neighborhood, and I would support this.
I'd like to just also make a comment that I think there's probably a misunderstanding of what multifamily means. For the commission, multifamily is generally at least medium to larger density. Single family is definitely doesn't meet that same criteria, and so then I just wonder if we're speaking the same language, I guess, with the neighborhood. And from my perspective, going from a low density to single family residential is not a drastic change. It would be drastic if it was low density to then high density. But I also want to make the comment that given the nature of this lot, it will be a planned development, which means it will be coming back to the Planning Commission, and therefore it will also have a public component to it that will involve the community noticing, community council, and then it will come back to the Planning Commission, because we will be reviewing then the site functionality, what it looks like, because there will be lots that aren't street frontage. So this is not like your only opportunity to see what's coming, because we don't know what's necessarily coming either, but we know it will be coming back, the details of this, and the public will have an opportunity to weigh in. Andra, did you have comments?
Anyone else? Andra? Amy?
What kind of density would be allowed if we changed the zoning to SR3?
So it drops down from one single-family house per 7,000 square foot lot to one per 2,000, or an attached row-style house of 1,500 square feet, but no more than 6 attached units per stretch. You can't have more than 6 on it attached together without having to start a new building. So that density, I can't do the math in my head of how many units per acre, but it's, I think I mentioned it in the report that it's more than 5. I can pull up the report and give you an exact number. Just give me a second.
Their preliminary drawing, which is not what we would be voting on, but they're kind of anticipating 18?
Yeah.
They're anticipating 18 units there?
Something like that.
Okay. And it doesn't look to me by like the houses that are there right now that they'll be accessed from 5th North at all. They will come from 15th West.
Yeah, that requires some, I mean, they could try to do it, but there's not really a lot of room on those existing lots to make that happen.
Okay. If, in 5th West, I just read the article and it reminded me of the accident that happened there where someone was killed, and it's a sad story. And traffic is scary to everybody, and if the traffic is bad in that neighborhood right now, you should contact the police officers and ask them to do a speed watch and something else, you know what I mean? Like there's a community officer who can help hopefully address that problem right now the way it stands, if it's already a problem. That's it for me.
Yeah, I would just echo Amy's comments about there is resources available for traffic calming, and that might be something to request. I mean, I think in general, there's actually been more motor vehicle accidents post-COVID because the lack of traffic allows people to speed. And so it's actually much more fatal to not have congestion on your streets. So I'm actually ready to make a motion unless there's other commissioners want to.
Go ahead.
All right. Motion number 1. Based on the analysis and findings in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council with the conditions listed in the staff report for zoning map amendment petition number PLN PCM 2021-01075 to rezone 552 North 1500 West and the northern portions beginning approximately 110 feet north of the 500 North right-of-way line of 1500 West, 1516 West, 1520 West, and 1522 West 500 North from R1 7000 single-family residential to SR3 special development pattern residential district. And the condition is that the proposal complies with the recommendations within the submitted housing loss mitigation plan.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Andra and a second by Mike and Amy. Amy and Mike.
I'm good.
Okay, let's start with Rich.
Yes.
Levi.
Yes.
Brenda.
Yes.
Adrian.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Andra.
Yes.
And John.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. The chair votes yes, too. Okay, somebody want to make the second motion? Andra, you're good at it.
I got lots of water. All right. Based on the analysis and findings in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council with the conditions listed in the staff report for Master Plan Amendment Petition number PLN PCM 2022-00674 to change the future land use map designation of 552 North 1500 West and the northern portions, beginning approximately 110 feet north of the 500 North right-of-way line of 1500 West, 1516 West, 1520 West, and 1522 West 500 North from low-density residential to medium-density residential, with a condition that the proposal complies with the recommendations within the submitted housing loss mitigation plan.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Andra and a second by Mike. John?
Yes.
Andra?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have another unanimous decision. One more.
All right. Based on the analysis and findings in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council with the conditions listed in the staff report for zoning map amendment petition number PLN PCM 2021-01203 to rezone the southern 110 feet approximate of 1500 West, 1516 West, 1520 West, and 1522 West 500 North from R1 7000 single-family residential to R1 5000 single-family residential, conditional on the proposal complying with the recommendations within the submitted housing loss mitigation plan.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Andrea and a second by Amy. Where am I? Rich?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Andra?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
See, they all sound the same over there. And the chair votes yes. Okay, do we have any other business? Okay, I will close this meeting of the Planning Commission.
What?
We're done.
Thank you.